Hello everyone, welcome to my channel Bachelor Nation News. Fans, the room was quiet in the way only early mornings can be. Too still, too honest. Sunlight slipped through the curtains in thin ribbons as Joan Vassos sat alone at her kitchen table, hands wrapped around a mug that had long gone cold. For weeks, whispers had followed her everywhere, comments online, knowing glances from strangers, headlines that felt louder than truth. And now, with one trembling breath, it seemed she was ready to face them. Joan had always believed love deserved patience. On The Golden Bachelorette, she opened her heart with courage, letting viewers see a woman brave enough to love again. Chock Chapple, with his steady smile and warm presence, appeared to be the safe harbor she'd been searching for. Their connection felt genuine, built on late-night talks, shared laughter, and the promise that second chances could be just as powerful as first loves. But something had changed. Those close to Joan noticed it before she ever spoke. The spark in her eyes dimmed just slightly, her laughter arriving a beat too late. She posted less. When she did, the captions were thoughtful, careful, almost guarded. Fans began to wonder if the fairy tale had quietly unraveled when the cameras stopped rolling. Then came the moment that sent hearts sinking. During a recent emotional reflection, Joan didn't name names, but she didn't have to. Her voice softened as she spoke about loving deeply and letting go when holding on hurts more. She paused, blinking back tears, and added, "Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is accept that something beautiful has reached its end." For many, that was the confirmation they feared. Sources close to the couple suggest that the split, if real, wasn't dramatic, but it was devastating. There were no explosive arguments, no betrayal whispered in the shadows. Instead, it was the slow realization that timing, distance, and life's realities can wear down even the strongest bonds. Love, as Joan seemed to confess, isn't always enough. Chock Chapple, usually open and warm with fans, has also grown quiet. His social media tells a story in fragments, photos without smiles, captions that speak of gratitude mixed with loss. "Some chapters teach us more than they promise," he wrote recently, a line that many interpreted as a quiet goodbye. For Joan, the heartbreak cuts deeper because she dared to believe again. After loss and years of rebuilding, she stepped into the spotlight not for fame, but for hope. She wanted to show that love after grief was possible, that joy could bloom even after heartbreak. To walk away now, even gently, feels like admitting a dream didn't survive the daylight. Yet there is dignity in her sadness. Friends describe Joan as reflective, not bitter. She speaks of gratitude more than regret, of lessons learned rather than wounds inflicted. "I don't see this as a failure," she reportedly shared. "I see it as proof that my heart is still capable of loving fully." That confession, quiet, raw, and painfully honest, resonated with thousands. Fans flooded comment sections with messages of support, many sharing their own stories of love found later in life and lost again. "You gave us hope," one wrote. "Even if it didn't last, it mattered." Another added, "Sometimes love isn't forever, but it's still real." And maybe that's the hardest truth Joan appears to be embracing. In a world that demands happy endings, she is choosing honesty. In an era of perfect Instagram romances, she is allowing herself to be seen in her sorrow. Her sadness isn't loud, it doesn't beg for sympathy. It sits quietly, like the empty chair across from her at the table, like the echo of laughter that once filled the room. As for Chock, those who know him say there is nothing but respect between them, no anger, no blame, just two people who tried, wholeheartedly, and discovered that love can be both beautiful and brief. Whether the split is officially confirmed or still unfolding in private, one thing is clear. Joan Vassos is navigating heartbreak with grace. She is choosing healing over headlines, truth over illusion, and in doing so, she reminds us all that vulnerability is not weakness, it is strength. The sun eventually rises higher, filling the room with light. Joan takes a sip from her mug, finally warm again, and exhales. The chapter may be ending, but her story is not. Somewhere beyond the sadness, beyond the rumors and the tears, is a woman who still believes in love, even if it comes with heartbreak. And for now, that quiet confession is enough to break hearts everywhere. Joan's mornings had become ritualistic, almost meditative. She would wake before sunrise, not out of habit, but because grief often comes earliest. She'd sit with her thoughts, letting memories of laughter with Chock rise unbidden. They had shared simple joys, the scent of fresh coffee on Sunday mornings, long walks in the park when the world felt too heavy, quiet nights filled with soft music and whispered conversations. Those moments now felt like fragile glass, beautiful but impossibly easy to shatter. The heartbreak, Joan realized, wasn't in the absence of love. It was in the acknowledgement that sometimes love isn't enough to conquer life's relentless unpredictability. Distance, career demands, personal growth, none of it mattered when love was strong, but all of it mattered when love was still growing, still fragile. Joan's confession was more than words on a screen or a brief interview. It was a mirror held up to anyone who had loved and lost, anyone who had dared to open their heart and felt it ache. She admitted that she and Chock had tried, truly tried, but that the effort could not rewrite the reality of their separate paths. There were no villains here, no dramatic betrayals, just two people who, despite their best intentions, found themselves at the edge of a love that could not endure. Fans and followers were relentless, seeking the story behind the story. Social media posts were dissected, every emoji analyzed for hidden meaning. But Joan remained careful, determined to protect the private moments that mattered most to her. "Some things are ours alone," she explained softly in a post, her words simple yet filled with profound grief. "Not every story is meant to be public, but every story is meant to be felt." Even in heartbreak, there were moments of tenderness. A friend recounted seeing Joan in a cafe, quietly laughing at something in her phone, a smile that was fleeting but real. It was a reminder that while love can end, life and the capacity to feel joy does not. Joan's journey wasn't solely about loss. It was about the courage to live fully, to experience deeply, even when that experience brought pain. Chock, too, faced his own private sorrow. Those close to him said he had retreated not out of avoidance but reflection. Each photograph he posted seemed carefully chosen, a reminder of what was beautiful, what was meaningful. "We had something rare," he wrote in a cryptic note online, "and even as it ends, I'll always carry it with me." The public response was a mix of empathy and heartbreak. Fans mourned not just the split, but the love that had inspired them. Joan and Chock's story, brief as it may have been in the public eye, left a lasting impression. It was a story about honesty, about the bravery of showing up for love even when it might hurt. It was about two people who chose kindness over resentment, closure over chaos, and love over bitterness. Their heartbreak wasn't dramatic, it was human, and perhaps, in its quiet authenticity, it was more relatable than any grand romance could ever be. For Joan, the days ahead were uncertain. She would need time to grieve, to reflect, and to rebuild. But even in sadness, there was hope. The very act of admitting heartbreak, of facing it openly, was a form of healing. It was the first step towards accepting that life moves forward, that love can end, but the capacity to love again never truly disappears. Her fans, touched by her vulnerability, offered words of comfort, yet Joan knew the real work was inward. Healing would come slowly, in small gestures, a walk at sunset, a phone call with a friend, a moment of quiet laughter. And when she finally smiled again, it wouldn't erase the heartbreak, but would honor it, acknowledging that every tear shed had been a testament to a heart that dared to feel deeply. In a final reflection, Joan shared one last message that felt like a benediction. Love is never wasted. Even when it ends, it teaches us who we are. It reminds us to be brave, to be open, and to keep believing in what is good, even when it hurts. And so, the story of Joan Vassos and Chock Chapple became more than a headline or a social media trend. It became a story about the beauty of human emotion, the courage of vulnerability, and the undeniable truth that sometimes, even love that doesn't last is worth every heartbeat. For those watching, crying, and empathizing, the heartbreak was palpable, but so was the lesson that life, in all its joy and sorrow, is meant to be felt fully. And in Joan's very public yet deeply personal confession, fans found both sorrow and inspiration. Because while the chapter with Chock may have closed, Joan's story of hope, heartbreak, and the enduring power of love was far from over. The world seemed quieter than usual that morning. Sunlight slipped through the curtains in pale streams, painting Joan Vassos's kitchen in soft gold. She sat alone at the table, her hands wrapped around a mug of coffee long gone cold, staring out the window as if the view could offer answers she didn't yet have. For weeks, rumors had swirled, whispers following her in the streets, online comments piling up like weight on her chest, and now it felt like she had no choice but to confront them. Joan had always believed in love with a kind of stubborn hopefulness. On the Golden Bachelorette, she had let herself be vulnerable, daring to love again after heartbreak. Chock Chapple had been more than a companion. He had been her confidant, her laughter, the quiet presence that made the world feel lighter. Their connection had felt genuine, almost magical, built on long nights of conversation, walks under starlit skies, and small moments that carried enormous meaning. But something had shifted. It wasn't dramatic, not in the way tabloids often portrayed splits. There were no public fights, no betrayals whispered in shadowed corners. Instead, it was a slow, almost imperceptible drift, the kind that starts with missed messages, pauses in conversation, and laughter that arrives a fraction too late. Friends noticed it first. Fans felt it through her increasingly thoughtful and guarded social media posts. And now, in a candid interview, Joan had finally said the words that everyone had feared. Love, no matter how true, sometimes isn't enough. I've learned that loving someone deeply doesn't always mean you get to stay together, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Tears threatened at the corners of her eyes, but she held them back with a quiet dignity. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let go, even when it hurts more than anything else. It was enough. For many, those words were confirmation of a heartbreak long suspected. Sources close to the couple later described the split as peaceful but heartbreaking. It was not about anger or resentment, it was about reality. Distance, timing, and life's unrelenting pressures had slowly worn down what was once unshakable. Joan and Chock had tried, endlessly, but some battles could not be won with love alone. And in admitting this, Joan showed a kind of courage few could claim, acknowledging pain without turning it into a spectacle. Chock, too, had taken his sorrow quietly. His social media, once full of smiles and shared adventures, had grown sparse. A single line on his profile read, "Some chapters teach us more than they promise." Fans recognized it immediately as a sign that the love story they had adored might truly be ending. Comments poured in, messages of empathy, of heartbreak, of gratitude for the love both had shared. Joan's grief, however, was different from what the public might have expected. It wasn't loud, dramatic, or seeking pity. It was subtle, introspective. She spoke not only of loss, but of growth, of gratitude for what she and Chock had shared. "I don't see this as a failure," she admitted in a reflective post later. "I see it as proof that my heart is still capable of love." Even in her sadness, there were glimmers of resilience. Friends described her as reflective, quietly reclaiming her days through small acts of self-care. A morning run, a long walk in the park, the ritual of reading her favorite book with tea. She laughed sometimes, fleetingly, as if catching glimpses of herself before heartbreak. It was a reminder that while love can end, life and the ability to feel joy never truly stops. Fans responded with an outpouring of emotion. Thousands shared their own stories of love found and lost, expressing admiration for Joan's honesty and bravery. "Even if it didn't last, it mattered," one fan wrote. Another added, "You showed us that even heartbreak can be beautiful if we carry it with dignity." Joan and Chock's story became more than a headline. It became a lesson in vulnerability, in courage, in the delicate balance between hope and reality. Their heartbreak was human, quiet, painful, and infinitely relatable. In an era where relationships are often reduced to sound bites and gossip, their story reminded everyone that sometimes love is real even if it doesn't last forever. In her quiet mornings, Joan often replayed memories of the happiest moments with Chock. The way he would tuck a strand of hair behind her ear, the shared laughter over inside jokes that no one else would understand, the late-night conversations that stretched into dawn. Each memory was a soft ache, a proof of love that had been real, tender, and profound. Her confession, then, was both heartbreaking and inspiring. It was a reminder that loving fully, even if it ends in loss, is never wasted. That grief, while heavy, is part of the human experience, and that embracing vulnerability is a form of bravery. As sunlight finally warmed the room, Joan lifted her mug, letting the steam rise and curl into the quiet morning air. The chapter with Chock might have closed, but her story was far from over. There was healing ahead, small moments of joy yet to come, and the enduring hope that her heart could love again. "I will always cherish what we had," she said softly, almost to herself. "Even as it ends, it reminds me that life is meant to be felt fully, joy, heartbreak, and everything in between." For those watching, crying, and empathizing with her very public heartbreak, Joan's honesty offered solace. Love, even when it ends, leaves a mark on the soul, and in that quiet, very sad confession, fans everywhere felt the profound truth. Sometimes the most beautiful stories are also the ones that break our hearts. Too still, as if the world had paused in anticipation of the confession that weighed on Joan Vassos's heart. She sat at her kitchen table, hands wrapped around a mug that had long gone cold, staring blankly at the sunlight creeping across the floor. For weeks, rumors had followed her relentlessly, whispers on social media, speculative headlines, and the unspoken tension in every public appearance. Today, however, the weight of silence became unbearable. Joan had always believed in love's quiet power. On The Golden Bachelorette, she allowed herself to hope again, to trust again. Chock Chapple had been more than a partner. He had been her anchor, her laughter, the soft echo of comfort that made the chaos of life seem manageable. Together, they shared moments that seemed inconsequential at the time, but now, in reflection, felt monumental. Coffee in the quiet of early mornings, walks beneath starlit skies, conversations that stretched into the small hours when words seemed unnecessary and presence alone was enough. But love, Joan realized painfully, does not always conquer circumstance. It started subtly, A delayed message here, a distracted smile there, small gaps in attention that went unnoticed at first but soon became undeniable. Friends sensed it before anyone else. Fans speculated when social media posts grew increasingly measured, carefully curated, and devoid of their once effervescent energy. And now, when asked directly about her relationship, Joan admitted what the world had been waiting for. Sometimes love is not enough. "I've loved deeply," she said softly, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "And sometimes even that isn't enough to make things work. Letting go doesn't mean you didn't try, it means you were brave enough to see the truth." For fans, the words were confirmation. Heartbreak had crept quietly but inexorably into Joan and Chock's lives, and now it had emerged into the public eye. Those closest to the couple revealed that the split wasn't fueled by drama or betrayal. It was the quiet erosion of possibility. Distance, life pressures, and the inevitability of growing apart had made it impossible for them to continue as a couple, despite the love that remained. The tragedy lay in the gentle honesty, in the courage it took to admit that even the strongest love cannot always withstand life's relentless pull. Chock, too, had been seen retreating into reflection. His social media posts, once bright and shared with enthusiasm, had become sparse and cryptic. "Some chapters teach us more than they promise," he wrote. Fans understood immediately that this was not a casual remark. It was his quiet acknowledgement of loss. For Joan, the heartbreak was almost unbearable in its silence. It was not loud or angry, it was soft and enduring, a gentle ache that seemed to seep into every corner of her days. Friends described her as introspective, walking through the early mornings with thoughtful steps, pausing to appreciate small joys, birds singing in the park, sunlight glinting off frost, the simple comfort of a warm cup in her hands. Even in sorrow, there was dignity. Even in loss, there was grace. Flashbacks haunted her. She remembered the first time Chock had taken her hand, the warmth of his touch and the subtle reassurance in his gaze. She remembered quiet evenings filled with laughter over private jokes, moments of unspoken understanding, and the rare, magical feeling that someone truly sees you. Each memory, tender and bittersweet, became both a comfort and a wound. Her confession was not just personal, it was universal. Fans and followers found pieces of their own lives reflected in her words. Thousands shared stories of love and loss, offering messages of gratitude and support. "Even if it didn't last, it mattered," wrote one. "You gave us hope," another commented. Joan's honesty became a mirror for anyone who had dared to open their heart and faced the inevitable ache of heartbreak. Even in sorrow, there were glimmers of hope. Joan knew that healing would not be immediate. She would take time to grieve, to reflect, and to rediscover the pieces of herself that had intertwined with Chock's presence. Yet in her quiet mornings she felt the stirrings of resilience. She would smile again, not as if forgetting, but as a testament to her strength, the courage to love, to lose, and to continue. And Chock, for his part, carried his own quiet sorrow. There were no recriminations, no bitterness, only the lingering presence of a love that had shaped him, taught him, and left an indelible mark. Their story had ended, yes, but it had left them forever changed. In a final message to her followers, Joan wrote, "Love is never wasted. Even when it ends, it teaches us who we are. It reminds us to be brave, to open our hearts again, and to cherish what is real, even when it hurts." Her confession resonated far beyond the world of reality television. It became a story about the courage to be vulnerable, the inevitability of heartbreak, and the enduring human capacity to feel deeply. Love, she proved, is meaningful not because it always lasts, but because it is felt fully. As the sunlight grew stronger, Joan lifted her mug and inhaled the warmth, allowing it to seep into her chest like hope itself. She would grieve, she would heal, and she would, eventually, allow her heart to love again. But for now, in the stillness of that morning, her heartbreak was enough. Broken heart. The story of Joan Vassos and Chock Chapple was more than a breakup. It was a testament to the power of love, the bravery of letting go, and the quiet strength it takes to face a very human, very sad truth, that sometimes the greatest love stories don't end with happily ever after, but with grace, reflection, and the knowledge that love, no matter how brief, leaves an eternal mark on the soul.